Hey everybody, this is Cindy Allen, Editor-in-Chief of Interior Design, and welcome everyone to day 2 of our Dimensions of Wellbeing program with our good friends at Kohler. Now, during times like these, we do look to leaders in the field like Kohler. Did you know that they were founded in 1873 and headquartered in Kohler, Wisconsin? Did you know that? Did you know that they are one of America's oldest and largest privately held companies with more than 50 manufacturing locations worldwide? I know, impressive. But I do know that Kohler is a global leader in design, innovation, and manufacturing of kitchen and bath products. And today, we're going to talk to some very special leaders in hospitality and dig into the many facets of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Okay, I'd love to introduce our panelists. We have Chris Evans, Associate Principal at Rottet Studios. Hey, Chris.
How's it going, Cindy? It's good to see you.
So good to see you. We have Fiona Thompson, Principal of Richmond International. Hi, Fiona.
Hi there, how are you?
It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, thank you.
And we have Niti Bhatt, Lead Interior Designer for Kohler Architecture and Interior Design. Hi, Niti.
Hi, Cindy, how are you?
It's great to see you wonderful panelists. Okay, first question. You know, I think about where the design industry has been. And I say that in hospitality, we were on a very good path with wellness and hospitality. But of course, everything has shifted and pivoted, and now it holds much deeper meaning and new challenges to solve. Chris, let's start with you. Are your clients trying to use this idea of wellness and make it mean something even more meaningful for their brand and for their guests?
Absolutely. I think it's a growing component to every hoteler's kind of requirements for how their hotel operates. And some are obviously it's really a part of the hotel DNA. And so you can't bypass it. It's very specific. Others are obviously starting to increase the visibility of it and start to market it. And obviously with the current the current climate, it's definitely becoming more and more important.
Yeah, Fiona. Fiona, where are you? Are you
in London?
You're in London, right? So what are your clients saying to you?
I think pretty much as Chris said, obviously the whole COVID thing has refocused people's minds, I guess, but that's probably more on hygiene and obviously well-being. I think it's given a lot of people an opportunity just to step back maybe and reassess. But the whole idea of well-being in hotels is no longer, just in the spa and the gym of a building. It's come out of there, I guess, and it's now affects everything we're doing with guest rooms, with F&B. It's a much more holistic approach, I think, these days to what well-being really stands for in the hospitality world.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, could I say it, that sometimes we would think of that as being luxury in hospitality, and now it'll be, everywhere for everyone, which is also a wonderful statement on hospitality. Yeah, Niti, I don't think everybody really knows that Kohler has a whole other business that is developing properties, their own properties in hospitality. And I know you're deep into some really interesting work right now.
Yeah, so Kohler has their own hospitality side where we have hotels, spas, restaurants, and it started with the American Club Resort, which is the only 5-diamond 5-star resort in Midwest. About 20 years ago, we have Kohler Water Spa got established as part of the American Club. And since then, we have many more properties in lodging and spa at Destination Kohler and Destination St. Andrews, which is Scotland. So we have Old Course Hotel, another 5-star property at St. Andrews in Scotland, along with the Destination Spa there as well.
If you've been to Kohler, you've definitely been to the American Club, that's for sure. But there's a lot of good stuff you're going to tell us about. There's something that Kohler does every year. It's called Perspective of the Year. And they kind of outline 5 foundational observations about health and wellness. And I think it might be a good, like, sort of fun and a good structure in which we can talk about our projects. So the first one is the environment, which is about obviously fresh air and sunlight and being outdoors. Chris, I know that you're working on a really, really interesting property right now that was a UNESCO world site. And It's all about being outdoors, right?
It is very much about being outdoors, and it's, I think it fits it very well into a lot of the design that we like to do, which is a little bit more analog in the sense of how do you connect people to the environment and bring people, indoors, but also still connect them outdoors and then bring the outdoors indoors. So we're always kind of playing with blending those things.
Yeah, what's it called? It's
in
Cartagena, right? It's in Cartagena, Colombia.
It's in Cartagena,
right?
Colombia. Yes, it is. It's right on the waterfront of this walled city that was built by the Spanish.
Yeah, Fiona, let's talk about some of your properties. What about? I know you do a lot of work with the Four Seasons.
We do.
How are they thinking about outdoor space and incorporating it into the design?
I think given that where there's an opportunity, outside space is becoming more and more important. Just that human connection to nature, I think everyone is feeling that it's a very important part in our sort of mental well-being as well as physical well-being. So where there's that opportunity, I think we're maximizing any amount of outdoor space we have. But even in urban hotels, really trying to bring the outside in as much as possible. So different types of lighting, natural materials. There's also, we're working on a spa resort in Tuscany in Italy, where it's very much which is in an old building again, which has natural thermal caves. So it has this amazing natural resource, if you like, as part of the environment that the hotel sits within.
That's amazing. Huh? That's really amazing. And Niti, Kohler finds properties that are always about being outdoors and then experiencing spa, right?
Correct. I want to give another example of our latest addition to hospitality, the Lodge Kohler Hotel. It's a 4-diamond hotel right across the Lambeau Field, the Packers Stadium in Green Bay. And we have a beautiful spa with a state-of-the-art thermal pool, which opens up to outside, like lush courtyard, conservatory feeling.
Let's talk about like another observation, which is something that I'd say in many instances we didn't have to think about in the deep way that we do right now, which is hygiene. Kohler, their DNA was hygiene. And of course in hospitality you do have to, durability and how to clean things, but really this is taking it to a whole other level. So let's share some of the things that you are doing. Chris, I do know in that Colombia project, there's a beautiful aspect right as you walk into reception.
Yes, well, the fun part about this property is it's a beautiful climate. It's very tropical, so it makes some parts of it very very easy. But it is you walk in and it's really an outdoor lobby. We do not have an indoor reception or bar. It is essentially an open air courtyard that, as we have obviously a bar and the reception, but as you continue into the hotel restaurant is really an open air restaurant that has it's open to the sky and the elements, all that comes with that, and the kind of connection to the environment in a very authentic way. And we've really, all of our opportunities there have been to bring in shade and bring in plants, but also looking at it very much in the scales, right? So that we have multiple levels of scale that you get to experience all the way up through the entire height of the building.
Yeah, but there was something really interesting on something with like a touchless faucet from the
Oh, right. So that's actually entering the spa. That's as you enter the spa facility, which is the entire experience is about purification and kind of stripping or removing the kind of toxins and pollutions of the outside world as you enter this very serene space. And so we have the actual reception desk. You're greeted with a fountain. It's a motion sensor hand washing fountain. So kind of almost like a cave dripping from the ceiling. We have this water source so that you can cleanse yourself as the first step of the process, and then you can from there you extend into the rest of the experience.
Yeah, Fiona, how are you all dealing with this new deeper aspect of hygiene?
I think there's always, in the sort of luxury hospitality end of the market, there's an expectation that hotels are clean and hygienic. I think there is certainly a move towards materials that are easier to clean, but I think the hoteliers certainly have a focus on things that can be cleaned. That they feel fresh and feel light, and I think using far more lighter fabrics which have the durability that can be washed and cleaned. There's a move away from, I suppose, extraneous clutter in design that's not necessary and that just adds more space that things can gather and create dirt. So I think a feeling of space is luxury, and I think hotels are now I think they're now fine with not having all of the bits and pieces. Don't need to over accessorize just for the sake of having things within a room or within a space. So it's that stripping back somewhat in the design and making it a bit more purposeful and clean.
Yes, and Niti, when I think of Kohler, I do think of cleanliness, but I also think of technology, right? Because you can't not think about the intelligent toilet and touchless faucets. So give us a little bit more in depth on what you guys are doing right now.
Absolutely. So I think from earliest day, cleanliness and hygiene is the core of what we do at Kohler. And so like more than 10 years ago, I remember being in a meeting and Mr. Kohler asked for no doors to the public restroom. And that was not a common practice yet. And we're like, what do you mean no doors, right? And so we created indirect entry, avoiding sight lines and creating privacy and nice indirect entry to the, doorless entry to the public restroom. And ever since, that's have been our common practice. All our public restrooms have doorless indirect entry along with our beautiful touchless product collection. We think touchless products are measured to the greater hygiene and creating just peace of mind, especially in today's day and time more than ever. Also, intelligent toilet, that gives you touchless hygiene, addition to like the upscale experience, just elevated sense of experience and having personalized features. You could have your, bidet seat clean and your, the seat lifts up as a motion sensor. So really full experience with some of those products. Our wall mount touchless products and soap dispenser that we were using in some of the newer properties where everything comes from wall. So your counter is just, very clean and no clutter. So you don't have to clean around those faucet and soap dispenser. It's just like one, wipe and you clean the counter. I think those are the little details that are very important to create that seamless, hygienic, clean environment.
I can't believe it was 10 years ago that Mr. Kohler said no doors, because that's kind of brilliant when you think about it.
And it wasn't, the airports didn't even have, they probably started a little bit here and there, but it wasn't the common practice yet. And it just made sense. It was just, we've been practicing some of these things before even we know it was a concern.
Yeah, and Chris, how does Rottet Studio, how are you all dealing with, as Fiona said, new materiality, touchless? It's, you're digging in a deeper way.
Well, I think obviously there's the technology is a big component, and but we try, a lot of our approaches, like I've mentioned before, is somewhat more analog, and so we do promote the kind of the clean interface with things through planning, right? How do you, like for instance, the being able to approach a restroom without having to go through a door, or how do you bring natural sunlight all the way back from the very into the deepest part of the building, right? So those are often, every move we make is to support natural sunlight and the UV. And so while touchless is an amazing function and we're utilizing in many of our properties, just using the design and the architecture to help provide the same benefits.
Yeah, you've worked on quite a few Calgary courts, and I always found them, by the way, published them too, but found them super interesting. Give us a little brief on those.
Well, the courts projects for Valencia are very much outdoors centric. They are somewhat based on a motel concept, but they are very much a hotel, and they're and a luxury hotel. But they are urban, but always on based around one large courtyard. So, all the rooms we enter through the exterior, they are, every room has porches, and the amount of natural light through all those rooms is amazing. But I think one of the things that really sets it apart from others is the ability to socialize outside. And I think as a component of wellness, like social wellness is such a huge piece of people's wellness, and being able to have this site to explore. That depth of space allows for guests to kind of be alone together, right? So there's all these places to kind of hide away, a fire pit here, or a garden seat here, or so they have a great amount of diversity, and we're very fortunate to work on both the landscape concepts and all the architecture for those projects.
Yeah, because those are kind of the projects that you look back and go, oh my God, there was all this incredible outdoor space. We utilized it really well, and it's so good for right now. Fiona, I'm interested in your international perspective, obviously. I know that you work on the Langham, Boston and London. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a viewpoint on how they differ or how similar they are.
And obviously we did Chicago as well. I think each project is very different, and all three are very much embedded. They're very urban, large city hotels. So it's very different to the kind of resort with lots of outside space that we're talking about. I think that they all have their own unique character, and they're very much embedded in the cities where they're located, which is that whole sort of cultural reference, and that they're local and that they're used by the local community is so important. They obviously, Langham have their own spa brand, which is Schwann, which is all about spiritual as well as physical well-being. So again, that's an important part of all of their properties, in fact. But I think it's this connection with human relationships, and the fact that the hotels are so entrenched in the location and very much of the location. They're all in character buildings, all very different, from a Mies building in Chicago, which is extraordinary in itself, right the way through to London, which I think was the first purpose-built hotel, and now Boston at the Federal Reserve. So they have very characterful histories and past, and it's really bringing that out, I guess, in the design and creating spaces that people enjoy and want to be part of. And as Chris was saying, it's being together, but also being able to be alone and private if you need to. So it's being able to use these buildings constantly and in lots of different ways, and really being able to sort of personalize, I guess, the experience that you have in each property at any given time. And they are very much part of where they are, and the communities use them a lot.
One other thing we should talk about are these evolving spaces of hospitality, right? It's not, I know that, we talk about whether there's going to be workspaces in hotels, or what are the rooms going to look like? Are there going to be longer stays in hotels? Give us your perspective a little, Chris.
Well, I think that one thing that's interesting about hotels right now, especially in today's climate, I think is, people have been stationary for a very long time right now. And if you haven't destroyed your house and torn it all out by now, you have a great deal of peace in your life. But I think people go to hotels now. I do think that people are looking for something that's different from their home. It is an experience, and I think we really want to tap into their emotional response of the guest. But I think so much of the way it's changing, I think, is blurring the lines, for better or worse, blurring the lines between work and relaxation. And I think being able to provide this kind of environment that allows for a constant flow between, I think the passion of what we do, I think there's a lot of people that have the same feeling, and being able to kind of flow between relaxation and work is important. And how do you create spaces that really are very flexible? It is something we strive to create so much diversity for how you exist in your space.
Yeah, Fiona, are you hearing that from clients too?
For sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we're in lockdown again in London at the moment, but I think what COVID has done is changed the whole way that we work, not just our industry, obviously, but, across multiple in all industry. I think that we had this very clear focus before that we were very office-based, that, we didn't work in a sort of disparate way where people were spread all over the world or even all over London. And it was, even myself, I felt that it was very important that we all were very much together the whole time to create that collaborative process, I guess. And I think what COVID has taught us that isn't necessary, and you can actually have a different way of working. That work-life balance is being readdressed, I think, quite significantly during this time. So people have been able to focus on things where when you're rushing around from place to place and not really having time to do that, it's changed quite significantly for people.
Those are the conversations you all are having at Kohler?
Absolutely. We, like Chris says, we're not having that traditional desk where you stare at the wall. So we are creating more interactive areas, a desk looking out the window, and that can multi-purpose as a dining area inside the guest room, and outside we're adding more courtyard spaces, and guest room on the ground floor has outdoor areas to hang out, and have grill and fire pit outside to kind of have their little mini social gathering going on, in addition to the public spaces. So everywhere we get opportunity where we're bringing outdoor in to create that experience that people are looking for, especially now with, being locked in their home for a long time.
Tell us about, I don't want to miss talking about the thermal spas.
Yeah, so with with spas, we're taking Wellbeing to another level almost. So every hotel has Kohler Destination Kohler Water Spa, which the key signature of the spa is the hydrotherapy pool or thermal pool, and has state-of-the-art technology. So you're experiencing jets on, right from your ankle to your wrist level, and going through this journey kind of sets us apart from, some of the other spa in the area. In addition to that, we have 5 foot to 6 foot deep cold plunge pool, which again gives you that hot and cold therapy, and then steam room, sauna. Obviously, some of those other amenities are there as well. We are taking this to another level and adding bathrooms. At Lodge Kohler, we created bathrooms with beautiful Kohler's Real Rain ceiling panel, which is experience of real rainfall, and everything's controlled with the DTV prompt, which is a digital interface that allows you to control your sprays, the temperature. So that gives allows guests to have their personalized showering experience. Again, extension of the spa they can experience in their own room.
By the way, I saw I was at Salon de Mobile, and that's the first time you guys unveiled the Real Rain, right?
Real Rain, yes. Real
Rain. And it was like real rain, I have to say. And by the way, you guys both, without planning it, you both talked about one of the observations, which is inter and intra-personal spaces, right? Chris, what about emotionally and spiritually? What do you want a client coming to one of your properties to feel, and how are you going to help them feel well?
Well, when it comes to spirituality, I think that's something that's sometimes kind of hard to define. But I think, for Rottet Studio, I think art is such a big part of how people can engage space spiritually, or music. Instead of not just being a piece of art on the wall, it's how can you engage the guest. For instance, we have we're renovating a JW Marriott expansion here in Houston, actually, and we created a furniture piece that's really an art piece, and it's a series of it's a famous garden here in Houston that we literally made a puzzle out of, and it's this fabric that's made into art, and then turned into this interactive element for a guest to kind of discover and explore and be a part of, not just to look at, but also bringing music to the guests and letting them be a part of that, right? So one of our recent projects for we created a quartz project in Lubbock. There's guitars that can be checked out by the guests that they can take into the outdoor spaces or the rooms or whatever, and kind of be a part of the music.
Maybe in the past we would talk about, Fiona, am I right? We would talk about the experience, but now it's becoming a much more like personal experience.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the way we're approaching design is all about, it's very guest centric. So it's how a guest feels, how they use space, how they can interact with the space, with other people.
I want to give everyone an opportunity. When you think about well-being, just what one property right now, whether it's one that's completed or one that you've worked on, that kind of is the embodiment of what you see moving forward? Fiona?
I think it's an urban project, but it's very much using every small part of the urban or the outside space as well. So it's repurposing roofscapes as well. You know, there's a great tradition in hotels where the roof was where all your MEP was, and it wasn't really a space that was necessarily used. So it's really turning that on its head. So we're using all of the roof space, creating great restaurant and terrace areas, creating almost a grandma's garden, so reminiscent of a traditional garden at ground floor, which opens up into the cityscape as well, which can be used by both hotel and outside guests as well. So it creates this great connection to the outside. Where you have car park areas, putting in, you know, glass box meeting spaces with gardens again. So it's really trying to look at space in a slightly different way. And the meeting space, I think, you know, we all went through a tradition where meeting space, you had ballrooms, meeting rooms, and you had breakout, and that was kind of very separate from your hotel guests, and almost they were two different environments. And I think we're trying to break those down in this project again, so that where people break out, they do go to the bar, they do go to the garden, they do, you know, experience other parts of the hotel. So there's not this great separation. So it's really trying to bring the outdoors into the project very much so as well.
Chris, what about you? Is there a property or a few things that you're working on that you're particularly excited about just in terms of wellness?
For sure. We have, you know, one project we're working on. It's actually an apartment building, but it is kind of an exciting renovation of a property. There's a historic building that's we're actually converting into an office, and then there's a new apartment that we're building in the back of the large campus. And I think one of the things that's exciting there is how we are integrating natural environments into the building. I think, you know, we've always loved the idea of plants, but I think really working and designing, how do you create an indoor space that's lush and green? I mean, the properties, right? Indoor pollution, additional oxygen, all those things that plants bring, de-stressing people, you know, it's all critical right now. And so I think those are some of the things that I think are very exciting for us, is just the opportunities to create we have a couple of projects. One of we call it an orangerie, which is kind of obviously a French word for, you know, this kind of indoor greenhouse. And so we have this wonderful lobby where part of the lobby is literally is a greenhouse. And that same project actually has a roof terrace that is also a significant greenhouse. So we have a number of spaces that are really built around kind of bringing green life into every day, and the amazing benefits that plants bring to you. You know, and then, you know, we also have, I think the continuation, we have so many of these quartz projects that we've been working on. And I think, you know, they are very analog in the sense of very simple, but I think that the fun of creating spaces in an urban situation that are very outdoor, and that, you know, one of my favorite things about them, and one of my favorite details when we design the architecture for them is the stairs, right? You know, I think I love to force people to use stairs over the elevator. Obviously, they are a necessary thing with baggage and everything, but the ability to encourage people to experience the vertical circulation and celebrate, you know, climbing through a structure is something that we'd like to put that in front of the elevator, right? Let's use this, you know, from the mental health and spiritual health, the journey is what we're all about. And I think these quartz projects allow us to have such a, all the guests have such a journey as they kind of experience all these outdoor spaces, and the kind of the way the architecture supports kind of using your own energy to move throughout them, I think is one of the things that excites us very much.
Yeah, I love that about you guys too, because it's so, you know, the span of the hospitality work is so different. So I do, and I know those projects really well, which is completely different than other things that you do. So I love that, you know, expressing wellness in that way, which is, like you said, a little bit more analog. First of all, Chris, Fiona, Niti, thank you so much for your insight. I always think of hospitality as, you know, pushing design forward and leading the way, and we certainly need you all as we move forward to a healthier, more well world, whether it's physically, mentally, and spiritually. So big hugs. Thank you. Thanks so much for your insight. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Hello, I'm Helene Oberman, Managing Director of Interior Design Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to Product Live. This is our series that delves into the products and trends, grabbing the industry, and in real time, look at the minds behind the design. So it began with a mission to reverse global warming. They stopped seeing carbon as the enemy and began to use it as a resource. Taking its cue from nature, Interface has learned to work with carbon, using it as a building block to engineer better products. And now, with the goal to make products with the lowest carbon footprint possible, Interface is designing products that go well beyond neutral in order to restore the health of the planet. With me today to discuss Interface's product innovation to reduce their carbon footprint is Kari, Vice President of Global Design, and Lisa Conway, Vice President of Sustainability for the Americas. Welcome, ladies. It's so lovely to have you on today's program.
Hello.
So, diving right in. So with your Mission Zero challenge now met, congratulations. You have set up a new commitment for Interface to reverse global warming with climate takeback and for the company to be carbon negative by the year 2040. So Lisa, can you go and explain what this new goal entails for Interface?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were nearing the end of Mission Zero, we started to think about what is Interface uniquely positioned to solve as far as a global world problem goes. And what we realized with the help of our Eco Dream team, including Paul Hawken and our long history of lowering carbon emissions associated with creating our products, is that what the world really needs now is the reversal of global warming. And this is not just about, quote unquote, the environment or polar bears. This is about restoring the health of our ecosystem, including to benefit us. So what it means for us is that we're not just looking at zero as a goal, we're actually looking at negative as a goal. And negative is kind of a strange thing, term to use, especially in design. But negative is a positive thing. That's the biggest thing to remember. The negative is actually a measurement, and it's a measurement of storage of carbon in a product, especially because they're plant-based and absorb that CO2 from the atmosphere. So we're really excited about what this can mean for our company, and then also what it can mean in terms of a product, which is what makes it really real for people.
So really, how did you guys decide upon this approach to take to carbon negativity?
Yeah, I mean, most of our listeners probably know that Interface has been on Mission Zero since 1994. So that was all about us eliminating any negative impact our company had on the environment by the year 2020. We declared success on that last year, but prior to the end of that mission, we started to think about what's next for Interface. You know, we're not a brand that rests on our laurels, and we wanted to think about what we were uniquely positioned to really give the world. We're not a huge company. A lot of the work that we do and the measurable impact that we have is through our ripple effect, through our brand reputation and getting others to do these large things. So what we started to land on was actually the reversal of global warming. So no big deal. you know. We love a good mission that sounds impossible. It's exactly what Mission Zero felt like when we set that back in 1994. And, you know, it really started to put our innovation team in a different place. We're no longer aiming for zero negative impact. We're now aiming for positive impact, which is actually measured as carbon negativity. So a little bit confusing. Carbon negative is climate positive. So that's really the way to think about it, because there's a lot more of this jargon that's out there. And what happened for us is we launched our mission of climate takeback in 2016. In 2017, we developed a prototype carpet tile that was in fact carbon negative. So if you remember just the number 6 out there generally, the carbon impact of that carpet tile was -2. So it actually showed that we could store more carbon in a product than having been released through its creation. And then we started to commercialize the backing. And here we are this month, it's now October, and we'll be launching both our Sequest backing platform, which is carbon negative backings, and then also 3 products that Kari has designed that are actually carbon negative in their totality. So the face and the backing, the whole product. So super exciting, and also luckily super beautiful, because no one would specify them if they weren't gorgeous.
Well, speaking of the collection, so obviously staying true to your sustainability mission and really to your need to uphold design, performance, and beauty, you are launching a new collection, apropos Embodied Beauty, which is directly aligned with your goal of carbon negativity. So Lisa and or Kari, is a good time sort of to jump in and tell us a little bit more about the launch of this new collection.
I'll hand it to Kari. She's been behind the scenes of designing this beauty.
Well, the collection consists of 7 products. 4 of them are carbon neutral and 3 of them are carbon negative. And so when we were first given the task to design a collection that's carbon negative, it became really important to me that we marry the aesthetics of the product with the mission that we were set out to achieve. And so we looked to the culture that one would associate with sustainability, with renewal, with zero waste. And so we looked at some of the things that were coming out of Japan in terms of, you know, the craft and the textiles and their dedication to reusing materials and giving them a new life. You know, when something's broken, they solder it together and they call it kintsugi, and it's incredibly beautiful. If a textile is torn, instead of throwing it away, they give it a stitching pattern and give it a new life and call that sashiko. So this seemed like the perfect marriage between us doing something to renew the earth and our atmosphere and putting together a product line that said things can be beautiful a second time around. With Embodied Beauty, we have the 4 carbon neutral products, which are pretty plush, especially compared to the carbon negative products, because the carbon negative products, in order for it to be carbon negative, at the time, we realized that the face weight had to be a certain ounce, and the stitching and the yarns that we used, the machine that we used, these were all new techniques, new constructions, new yarns, new machine. Everything was brand new to create something that didn't exist in the world. And when they're paired with the plusher fabrics, it really creates a wonderful landscape of textures across the floor. So there is a purpose to not just having carbon negativity, but also that aesthetic that enables to have a broader palette of ways for people to use the floor for wayfinding and for designating 6-foot distances, per se.
Well, I would love to find out from the two of you, actually, how you guys centered on the name of Embodied Beauty and what that actually means.
I love the name Embodied Beauty because it's almost like I got my word and Kari got hers. It's almost like this perfect interweaving of sustainability and design. Because I talk about, embodied carbon all the time. It's a big part of what our brand stands for. We co-founded an external collaboration around embodied carbon. But, we say all the time that if it's not beautiful, people won't use it. They won't specify it. I don't get that excited about all of the names of our products, but I really love this one. And I think it marks a moment in time for us where all of our collections going forward will have embodied beauty, even to a more extreme level than they have in the past. So it's pretty cool.
We keep on touching on these like 3 carbon negative designs, but can you actually sort of name them and sort of describe what each of them are like?
Yes, so so Tokyo Texture and Sishu Stitch and Zen Stitch are the names of the 3 carbon negative products. And so Tokyo Texture is just beautiful all over texture. It's just very organic looking. It can go in any place. It can complement any carpet at all. It's your wardrobe basic. And Shishu Stitch has a companion in carbon neutral product. Sashiko Stitch is the companion. Both are the same pattern, but because they're run on 2 different machines, they have a slightly different aesthetic. One is more plush, the other one's flat. And the color, because the yarns are also different yarns used for the different products, carbon neutral and carbon negative, the colors aren't exactly like, but they're paired together. And I think that this is really better, that you get a little bit more of a broader, a fuller sentence, if you will, in putting the carpets together, because they're not so matchy-matchy. Mm-hmm. They expand in tone. And then similarly, Zen Stitch has a pair of vintage kimono, also in the carbon neutral. So then we have Geisha Gather. So Geisha Gather is the plushest of the carbon neutral products. And Geisha Gather was inspired by the kimono. And the kimono is like pencil straight. It's, in its construction, it's meant to be as straight as possible. So we kind of took a cue from that. And then also the obi stash that's in the back, how it folds into a box in the back of the kimono. And we took the approach to make the plank itself the design element, rather than putting a pattern across the plank with this sort of sash, and you put it together across the floor with other planks, creates the pattern. And it's what we're borrowing also from another Japanese term of wabi-sabi, which is to embrace the imperfect. You don't control the floor so much and the design of the floor so much. You allow for that little something, that little imperfection to give that je ne sais quoi.
Well, it's interesting because there's one term that I know that was sort of maybe the meaning and the thought process, which you haven't touched on, which is it ikigai?
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Yeah. So what is ikigai?
Ikigai, I love that term. I love that word. It's not even a term. It's one word that encompasses a whole meaning for having a purpose. With this carbon negative journey that we are going on, and we're hoping others follow. We really, really want to change the world and to change the way that other manufacturers think about their products. This is our ikigai. This is our purpose. And so that ikigai embodies really the whole idea of embodied beauty, the Japanese crafts to be our inspiration, and envelop it with our sustainability mission.
So Kari, I know you kind of like gave a big overview. So of the collection, there's the 3 carbon negative, and then there's the complementary for carbon neutral styles. But actually, Lisa, I want to bring you back into the conversation because really just both for myself and the audience, it might actually be good to give everyone an understanding the difference between what a carbon negative and a carbon neutral carpet tile means.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much carbon conversation out there now, even in our consumer lives, climate pledges, and we're seeing a lot more commercials from tech companies and all of that. So it's great to really understand the difference. So carbon neutral means that just as many carbon emissions have been pulled down from the atmosphere as have been put up. So it basically nets out as a math equation to zero. So the way that Interface handles that is I often joke, we've been lowering the carbon footprint of our carpet tile for 25 years and no one has cared. I mean, some people did, but it wasn't really part of the specification process. We're seeing a lot more attention being paid to that now. I think that people feel and interior designers are getting more engaged in the conversation. It's not just an architect or an engineer's job to save the carbon impact of buildings. So basically, we have lowered the embodied carbon or the amount of carbon emissions associated with making the product. We have lowered that as much as possible, and then we purchase offsets to get to zero. That is kind of like what we can do today to get to zero as we continue to work towards getting all of our products to carbon negative. We're starting with only 3 styles, but what we've shown is that it's possible for us to create the product that our customers love to specify, and we're making that carbon negative, which again is a positive thing. So that's kind of the difference. Most of what you'll hear about out there that's carbon neutral today has done it with offsets. Hopefully that manufacturer has also reduced the carbon footprint first so that they don't have to buy a lot of offsets or buy their way to neutral. We are buying, less and less every year as we work on these innovations that get us to even lower carbon footprint and then carbon negative products as well. So even our general portfolio is reducing by about 1/3 with the launch of these Sequest backings. And then we have these few products that actually get below zero.
Well, and then
so
it's
that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think we need to educate, the audience about the differences. And, you kind of, Lisa had mentioned it earlier, that negative actually is a positive thing.
Yes.
And so for people to understand that when they hear it, because obviously our minds go in the opposite.
I know.
So negative out there is a positive for everybody. And it's great because while you say you just have these 3 products now, it sounds like you're already well on your way to launching additions to it. So this is only the first of 3. Let's get that right in front of our audience. But, Embodied Beauty certainly lives up to its name and shows that beautiful design and sustainability are inseparable. So with that, I'm sorry our time was short today, but I want to say to both you, Lisa, and to Kari, thank you so much for your time and certainly for your insight. And for our audience at home, please make sure to check out the Interface website to learn more about Embodied Beauty and Climate Takeback.
Hi there, I'm Katherine Given, Senior Style and Market Editor at Luxe Interiors and Design magazine. Thanks so much for tuning into our Collab Lab segment on DesignTV. So today, I am very excited to be chatting with masterful kitchen designer Mick de Giulio, whose distinctive spaces never fail to inspire me, as well as Erin Hoover, who is the very talented design director for Kohler's luxury brands, including Callista, who are, of course, the makers of beautifully crafted plumbing for the kitchen and bath. Thank you guys both so much for being here.
Thank you, Catherine. Good to be here.
So today we're discussing your new collaboration, the Juxtaposed collection, which is a line of kitchen faucets. And I think they're truly so elegant. It includes one of my all-time favorite designs, the new semi-professional faucet, which I'm excited to talk about in a little bit. But let's just jump in. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about how the partnership came to be, how you guys first connected. Mick, I don't know if maybe you want to start, because I know you've been working with Callista for a while, right?
Yeah, I have. I think it was more than 10 years ago, I started working with Rachel Kohler on actually one of her personal projects, her home. And we had a few meetings, and in one of the meetings, I remember her saying to me that, remember, we've got to use all Kohler in my house. And I said, of course. And then she was walking out of the studio and looked down at a sink that I had designed and she said, I really like that sink. And she said, but it's not Kohler. And then she looked up at me and she said, what if we hired you to design sinks, and then we could put a Kohler product, call it a Kohler product, and put that in the house. So that's how.
There you go. I love that. That's a pretty good story. And Erin, have you worked with Mick on some of his previous collections?
Well, the Juxtaposed collection was the first project that I worked with Mick de Giulio and his team on. And as he said, it's been this wonderful organic process where it started with a personal project for Rachel Kohler, and then it's just grown from, the Bhatt and the Multier and the Saltier sinks that were created in collaboration with Mick de Giulio. And then now we have this wonderful Juxtaposed semi-professional kitchen faucet collection, which we are so thrilled about.
So, Mick, I'm obviously such a fan of your spaces. Erin, I'm sure you are as well. But what, made you and Callista really want to collaborate with Mick on this?
Well, I think one of the things that I've always appreciated about Mick's designs is that they come from a place of listening to the consumer, listening to his clients. So rather than focusing on an aesthetic style, he's really focused on lifestyle. And this is something that we do at Callista as well. We really want to know, how can the products that we design and create make people's lives better, more gracious? I mean, we say live artfully, and that's really what we think about. And I think that's something we really share with Mick.
And Mick, vice versa. Obviously you have worked with Callista for some time, but I remember chatting with you that, they're such amazing innovators and engineers, and just, talk a little bit about what you love about Callista.
Well, I've always loved Callista, loved Kohler products. And I started working actually with Kohler products in the 70s. And I just thought they were the just absolute best at design. And they really are founded in design. And I think that culture of design, of engineering, of durability is what drew me to their products even before I started working with them. So when I was asked to work with them on these designs initially for the 3 sinks, it was just fantastic, because I could then draw on all of their engineering, all of their expertise, and we're talking about generations of engineering and expertise. And they were just so receptive to ideas. They never once said, here's what we want to do. We want to direct you in this direction or anything else. They really left it up to me. And it was really then fun to watch them getting a different perspective and then trying to work in that perspective with the engineering, and true collaboration. Just really, really a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. So, I know so much goes into a collaboration, into making each product, but I'm hoping you can both, walk us through the process a little bit, especially for Juxtaposed, from really ideation to prototyping to production, finishing, factories. We really want to know everything that goes into the collaboration.
Well, I mean,
loaded question.
Well, I mean, and we are thrilled to share that. I think one of the things that makes the collaboration really easy is that, we do have this longstanding relationship with Mick de Giulio, and I mean, I think as he just mentioned, it's really a dialogue. And we are really always very interested to hear Mick's point of view and what he thinks might be a good direction for us. So I think it always starts with that initial kind of, okay, so we have this beautiful suite of products. What do you think is the next thing that we should really be looking at?
So in the case of Juxtapose, I know, Mick, we were talking a little bit earlier about how you wanted something to complement some of the larger sinks you were doing, or really just in general, you wanted a really professional faucet that was also nice looking, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So really early on, we started talking about developing a line of faucets that would marry with these sinks. And so it did take years. And watching how Kohler and Callista go through the steps that they know so well of introducing a product. And if you back up from the point of ideation, starting with concepts, we started, more the mile high kind of idea, where concepts go to modeling, they go to renderings, they go to, and when I say modeling, that's on paper, but then the models, prototypes are created. And all of this takes a long time because each one of us, the engineers and marketing team, myself, we're looking at it critically, each concept, and thinking about how do we refine things each step of the way. How is this unique, or is it not unique, or how will this fit into the whole program? So it takes a while, but it's really a fun process, and it gets everybody thinking in different directions. And through this process, working with Kohler and Callista, I learned so much just about the engineering and the marketing and the aspects, the varying aspects that goes into every single product that they put out. So it's a lot of work, but fun work.
So now, you have this idea, what's next? Prototyping, production. Erin, walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So I think, to Mick's point, you go through several rounds of ideation and concept, and with the idea of constant refinement. We're also, as we have these ideas about the product, not only what it looks like, but how it functions, that's where I think this pipeline of innovation that Kohler and Callista have really comes into play. Because there were several things that Mick was very interested in having the faucet do. So we were able to sort of look at the different technologies that we have available at Kohler and say, well, we like these different spray functions. Could we maybe integrate these? How about how the hose actually operates? Do we want to put some kind of shield that would reduce the noise when you're moving the spray head around? So that's the other part that starts to come into play, where we have access to, as Mick said, all of this engineering experience, but also all of these interesting technologies that we're developing. So we start to integrate those, and then, as Mick says, they start to take form. So we start to have actual, 3D models. We start to have renderings. We start to have actual visual, sort of more refined products that we can start to really understand. And then there's also a phase where we start making physical prototypes. So we can actually test them out. For example, there was a magnetic docking element for the spray head, and that really had to work beautifully, seamlessly. You didn't want it to sort of not exactly connect, when you were finished with the spray head. So, testing out a lot of these things. And then the other part of it, which is really exciting, which is also something we're really thrilled about with Juxtapose, is finishes. So we really wanted to explore different finishes, mixing finishes. So we have several mixed finish options for Juxtapose that we're very excited about. So there's all of that that's going into it. So you're just sort of working through all of these different elements until finally you have this beautiful product that you can then, present to our wonderful audience of consumers and, the design community.
What a process. So, I find that even with something like magazines or with a lot of our editorial stories and shoots, the best products are really a result of this creative collaboration, right? Meeting of the minds, you have this push and pull. do you find, or did you find that you guys were really aligned or on the same page? I mean, Erin, I know you mentioned refinement. You know, there's probably a lot of back and forth, but, you know, do you guys find that you produce sort of the best work when collaborating with others?
Oh, absolutely. I am a firm believer that if you have a group of people who are working towards a goal with a diverse set of viewpoints, a diverse, you know, sort of they're coming at it. So the engineers will sometimes come at, you know, like we're thinking, oh, well, we should do it this way. And they're like, oh, no, what if you did? And of course, you know, we have the advantage of having Mick de Giulio, who is an industry leader, has so much experience, has done so many projects, you know, having him come in and really speaking to it from his particular point of view as a designer, but also from all of the insights that he's gained working with his clients. Like that's tremendous. It really allows us to just refine that product and make it, you know, just the best it can possibly be. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in the collaborative process, and it's fun too. I mean, it's.
I agree, right?
Points, yeah.
Mick, what do you think? I want to hear your input here.
Well, absolutely. You know, the process, the collaboration is fun. Drawing on ideas from each other, following up. Let's say if I mentioned something that, you know, it could be nice to do this. If we did this part on the faucet and whatever, they would then always say, okay, let us think of that. And then we'd meet again and they'd say, you know, you brought this up, and everything is always addressed in that process. So nothing falls on deaf ears, so to speak. And as Erin said, that, you know, what I've always done is worked with clients. I work with the people that, you know, their kitchen, and I hear from them what they like about faucets, what they don't like about faucets, and then I start thinking about my use of a faucet, everything from cleaning up around the faucet, where you like to move the lever, how you like something to look, and naturally, from all of that experience, then I'm able to feed that to Callista and Kohler, and then they'll sometimes reaffirm and say, you know, that's exactly what, you know, we see. We're working on that same idea. So I think we were always on the same page as far as the product and where we were headed. There was never a big diversion. I think on the sinks originally, that was a little bit different, where some of these ideas were just a kind of off the wall. And I thought they're going to think I'm completely crazy on this. And they didn't. You know, they embraced the ideas right away. But, you know, at no point did Kohler or Callista ever say, well, that is absolutely crazy, and, you know, we just can't do that. They always went back saying, you know, this could be good. This could be different. You know, we've done this. So I think that feeling that part of it, then I felt like I gave a part of the process that, as Erin said, a perspective that is coming through me, but it's really the things that I'm hearing from my clients and other designers, plumbers, everyone else. So it's really a lot of things in the process. It's not just the client and the marketing, but it is every person that touches this along the way, to the tradespeople, to the drillings in the countertops, and how will people react to this. So everything is so carefully considered.
Yeah, there really is so much that goes into it. But Mick, you mentioned your clients, you obviously work very, very closely with them. Do you draw inspiration from that? You know, I find right now that, you know, getting inspired is a little tough. Maybe it's just me, I'm homebound, I'm not out and about. And I always feel like, you know, the Callista products are very inspired and are very original. So I just kind of want to hear from you both a little bit, like, how do you find inspiration? Is it just being out and about? Is it talking to people? You know, I'm just curious to kind of get your perspective.
Erin, go ahead.
Well, for myself, it very much is about sort of just seeing how people live. And I'm very lucky. I live in New York City. So the city is inspiration to me always. But probably my favorite place to go for inspiration in New York is the Metropolitan Museum, just because you can see everything from Egyptian art to decorative objects by Tiffany and Fabergé, to armor to 19th century painting. So that's kind of when I need to recharge my inspiration batteries. I like to go there.
Ditto. Yeah. Mick, what about you?
Yeah, well, like Erin says, travel and just being exposed to so many different things is great inspiration. And I think, as I've gotten older and, done design for a long time, my feeling is that we have these antennas that we keep developing, and the antennas of getting ideas or being inspired become stronger because there's so much accumulation of ideas and things that we're exposed to. I do think that my clients are number one inspirations. And, an inspiration is a problem. It's a challenge. It's identifying a challenge many times of how can we have a faucet that is elegant, but it's still highly functional, that it cleans up well, that it's ergonomic, and it's really identifying these initial challenges, and they become the inspiration. And the old saying, form follows function, right? I think in terms of the function really creates the form, and really that's what we tried to do on the sinks and the faucet. Is that thinking about the faucet and the sink is what are the functions around it, and how can we stay true to the function and keep it simple rather than creating something that's a decorative piece. So it's really a functional piece, and the sinks as well, driven by the idea of what happens around those fixtures.
Well put. So I want to get to the pieces now. I really want to walk through sort of what's in the juxtaposed collection. I know there are a few designs, including a semi-professional faucet, I believe a pot filler, a bar faucet, but can you kind of just walk us through and maybe even touch on some of those, tech aspects you mentioned, Erin, and, I just kind of want to walk through the collection. Maybe start with the semi-professional faucet, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, that's really, to me, that's really the star of the show. That's really sort of they're all beautiful, but that one really is the standout. And that's the one I think, to Mick's point, form follows function, and the form is beautiful, as is the function. So a lot of focus went into, I think, just how the product felt, how the product was used. So the handle is very ergonomically designed. It's very easy to switch between the 3 spray options. So you have aerate, boost, and sweep spray. So these are all, again, with a lot of input from Mick about, what he was seeing when you're starting to have these larger sinks and, how people want to use a semi-professional faucet. So a lot of thought went into that. Again, the magnetic docking system that I talked about, when you finish using the spray head, it just clicks back into place. And then, that sort of sound reducing shield that was placed inside, so that when you're sort of moving the hose around, you're not getting a lot of noise. Again, it should be sort of this very nice experience to use this. And then, the beautiful stainless steel coil that goes around the hose, which is functional, but also creates such a beautiful visual texture. And also, I think this is one of Mick's signatures. He is always doing these really interesting things with metal textures. So you'll see in the Bhatt sink that he designed with us, that beautiful hammered stainless steel. And then this, likewise, we have like this beautiful sort of texture along with mixed metals, which I think is another signature that, Mick really pioneered this. I mean, we're all doing this now, but I think Mick was onto the mixed metals way before, the rest of us were. And then, we sort of built out the rest of the collection with the, soap and lotion dispenser, with the bar faucet, and with the pot filler. So these are all sort of, part of the suite. And it really is about this idea of building out the whole collection. So you have the sinks, and then you have this faucet collection that really complements it.
And I remember, Mick, I think you mentioned aspects like boost and sweep spray, which I was, very interesting and will certainly help, I feel like, anyone clean dishes, right? But can you walk us through some of these, tech innovations that you guys implemented?
Sure. Well, the idea really I brought to Kohler and Callista was, to have strong performance, that we have especially in the case of the Multier sink, it's a longer sink, and the Soltier, they're single bowl sinks. So they need, they're workhorses in terms of the sink type. They're for people who use these sinks. They clean and they do the preparation around it. And part of that is the performance, being able to spray one end of the sink so you can get all the things out of the sink down into the disposal. So, you know, I say I brought this idea. Well, they've been working on this already for years. And they said, well, we've got, you know, this really cool technology. It's called Boost. And the ability to hit the button on the end of the faucet and increase the pressure, which is so critical to
so smart,
take, you know, reach those parts of the sink and spray things down. So they had it going already. And I was able to really come in and step in and be able to incorporate that as part of these products. But that was the performance part of it. And that's something they're thinking of all the time. It's not just, you know, this time. That's something they're working on constantly.
And then, Erin, I know you mentioned sort of the mixed metals and the finishes that you used with this collection, which are really beautiful. I particularly love the matte black, I think it's called. But Mick, do you also want to touch on that? Like, do you find you're using, you know, darker finishes a lot in kitchens? Is it really just a range? But I would love to hear sort of how you guys finalize some of those finishes and mixed metals, as Erin said, for this collection.
Yeah, well, Catherine, I think, you know, it's really down to, you've heard the expression, the personality-driven kitchen, and kitchens specifically for people. Well, that means really giving people variations and different ideas that they can choose from. Instead of saying, this is, you know, we do this and these two finishes. It's thinking about designers who are working with darker finishes, moodier kind of feel to spaces, and is it possible to fill that market of what people want to complement? So it's that idea, and the idea of mixing the metals, as you talked about and Erin talked about, doing finishes that are unique. They're, you know, I think a lot about the fashion right now. It's everything goes. You know, there's nothing that's wrong. Things are very expressive. They're very layered. And what we may have thought in fashion 30 years ago, you can't do this or you can't do that. Everything goes. And I think having that concept, and along with this layered idea goes the precision. And, you know, that's part of the technology that Kohler and Callista is able to do, the technology of doing really precise details in the metalwork. And one thing I thought of for the handle was thinking about it more like a watch, more like a, you know, fine jewelry concept. So if you really see the end of the photo or say the end of the faucet, looking at that almost dial to the round element and the more elegant hand that is the lever for the control lever. That was really the concept around it. So the word that we all used in the collaboration was elegant, that we wanted something, because there are a lot of professional kinds of faucets that sometimes they just don't work in an elegant kind of space. And we wanted that market between just your, you know, a standard kind of faucet to a very industrial, somewhere in between, that had this elegant feel.
I think this is an example of Mick really identifying a consumer desire that we might not have been aware of. So, you know, he sort of identified the white space where, you know, there are these, you know, sort of industrial looking faucets and performing faucets. And then you have, you know, sort of residential caliber ones that aren't going to have the same performance. There's this white space where we could create something that basically blended the two aspects and, you know, do it in an elegant way, do it in a way that you would want to put in a kitchen that was very, you know, upscale, had beautiful materials, beautiful design. So just that's another example of how Mick's insights can help drive our innovation.
Yeah, I completely agree. You want something that complements your beautiful space, right? I mean, as we all know, we're spending so much time in the kitchen, especially right now, it's really evolved to be much more than where we just eat and cook, right? It's really the heart of the home. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about how, you know, your design, I guess you really just touched on it, Erin and Mick, but you want your design, you know, your products and your, and even the spaces you design, Mick, to accommodate, you know, the way we're living today. Can you just touch a little bit on that? You know, how we are living today really in the kitchen, and how you want to, and how, you know, Callista approaches, you know, creating products, and you, Mick, also spaces to really, you know, to really fit into this very evolving kitchen space.
Well, as Erin had touched on earlier about lifestyle, that the lifestyle today is very informal. It's very casual, and it's very open and connected. You know, so people want to be together. There were the old kitchens of old, you know, which were compartments basically. You know, you had a dining room, you had a kitchen, you had, you know, the family room. And now people really want to stay connected, and they want open areas with a lot of natural light. And so that lifestyle trend is the most important trend that is really driving our products today, all kinds of products, and how we can create these elements that fit within these open and connected spaces, and don't look necessarily, and it's been talked about as kind of an unkitchen look about kitchens now. And that's true. Kitchens could be almost any room in the house, because we're doing refrigeration with armoires, we're doing different kinds of appliances that are more integrated, dishwashers especially. So you really can't identify some of these elements that are in a kitchen as a kitchen. And even proportions, we're trying to change what a proportion looks like, because there's a lot of massing in kitchens, and the massing gives it away as a kitchen. So however we can break down some of those elements is really one of the things we work on, but it's very connected, open, very casual.
You know, what about you, Erin? Are you always thinking about, you know, from a product standpoint, how people are living with and experience your products? And I guess obviously that has evolved over time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Mick is saying about the kitchen. You know, the way I think about it is it's become an all-day space. So it's not just, you know, you used to go in the kitchen, you know, I'm going to make breakfast and then I leave the kitchen. Now it's an all day, all function, because you might be sitting at the kitchen island eating breakfast, and then you might be working there. Your children might be, you know, having a meal and then, you know, playing with their friends in some part of the kitchen. So it just becomes, as Mick is saying, like really the center of the house. And very much, you know, we see people integrating things like soft seating, artwork, bookshelves. You would not have necessarily thought about this as being appropriate for a kitchen, but I think it's that continuing evolution, and also just the integration of technology into the kitchen. So, you know, we're at Callista, we're always thinking about this. We're always thinking about, you know, how are people using that space? How can what we design make that easier, better, more beautiful for them?
Well, certainly going to be interesting, right, to see how the kitchen space even evolves even more. But I'm curious, can you guys, is there another Callista Mick de Giulio collab on the docket? Anything, you know, I'm sure there is. I can't wait to, you know, see what else you guys sort of cook up. But, you know, what are you thinking? What's next?
Well, I mean,
anything you can share?
Speaking for Callista, I certainly hope so. And one of the things that I would say about working with Mick is that Mick is never at a you know, he never lacks for ideas. So I'm sure that there's something else that he's thought about that we should probably get working on. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Erin. I am too. I think it's a great collaboration, a great partnership, and already, you know, we trade little ideas here and there, snippets, and so I sure hope there will be some future things, and I know there will, so thank you.
Well, it's such a beautiful collection. I really so appreciate you both taking the time, you know, to talk about Juxtapose and really all that goes into it. And as I said, we really can't wait to see what's on the docket, for the next Callista Mick de Giulio collaboration. But to our viewers, appreciate you tuning into DesignTV, and we'll see you next time. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Coming from my world, Sonic can play such an interesting role because it provides a lot of the emotion to any experience. So visual design while can be very emotive, I think is cerebral since it's coming through our eyes, where sound just bypasses the neocortex and just goes straight to the heart, and we really feel it that way.
The power as designers comes with storytelling. How can we tell each other stories? For sure, as a way to empower one another and lift each other up, and also open up doors that could get us closer to our goal.
Hi, everybody. This is Cindy Allen, Editor-in-Chief of Interior Design. How are you? We're having this amazing hospitality roundtable today. I understand there's a really, really big crowd out there. Do you hear them, roundtable? Woo!
Yeah, I hear them. I hear them.
We hear you. Wow. All right. We have an amazing panelist around. Imagine we're around the table. I'm imagining you guys are all around the table, and I've hugged you all. So we have Adam Rolston, a great friend, creative and managing director and partner of Inc. Architecture and Design. Hi, Adam. These are all my good friends. With Margaret McMahon, she's Senior VP Global Director of Interiors for Wimberley Interiors. Hey, sweetheart, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad I've been able to connect with everyone. Thrilled to be here with everybody.
She's on the Catskills, so she's like, I'm hoping my Wi-Fi is okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we have Morris Ajmi, who we just published, The New Rockaway Hotel, founder and principal of Morris Ajmi Architects. And he has the same glasses as Adam. Big shout out to Design again. How are you, Morris?
I'm great. I'm great. And if you get confused between me and Adam, I have white buttons on my shirt. So
white buttons, everybody. But they're both very, very cute. Yeah. And then we have Adam Farmery, partner of Avroco. Hey, Adam. And then we have Sarah Duffy, principal of Stonehill Taylor. Sarah, how are you?
I'm great. So glad to be here.
So happy that you're all together. Fantastic. I do want to thank our sponsors, who are not, they're in the round table behind the round table, which I love so much, so I want to thank them. First of all, and we have some folks, I got their names and everything. So from the Brizzo and Delta brands, Emily Muller, Division Manager for Hospitality, because that makes a lot of sense. Emily, how are you? Thank you so much. We have Brian Ashley, and Robert Dubin is the VP of Sales for Brian Ashley. How are you? Thank you for being a sponsor. We have DuPont Tedler Wall Coverings, and it's Ralph Cozier, Global Director. Thank you, Ralph. And Hudson Valley Lighting Group, Robert Garcia, Director of Contract Hospitality Sales. Thank you, Robert. And Mattress Firm, Leslie Pia, Senior Sales Manager, Outside and Commercial Sales. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. Listen to them, because these are the thinkers for hospitality. All right, so first of all, first question out to everybody, and then we're going to put a poll question up. But how does hospitality look today versus 8 months ago when the pandemic hit? Who wants to start? Margaret, start.
Thanks. Thanks for that. You know, Adam Farmery and I did a panel when it first broke, and it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, I can tell you that. And it was, we've had projects go on hold, and this is the unvarnished truth that I'm giving you. We've had projects go on hold. We've had 1 or 2 or 3 projects start, which we're very lucky and fortunate to have. We have had to make staffing changes and sort of course correct as we move along. I still don't know. I think that the big thing for us, for all of us, was we were also stressed out about the election and what our country was going to be first, and then let's figure out what the world is going to be. That was the first thing that suddenly felt like there is hope. you know. And what we're seeing is very cautious movements ahead. China is fully back and up and running, so we're seeing more activity there. And hopefully, you know, when there is the vaccine and when everything gets back to normal, I think that we're going to have another peak. Not that I have a crystal ball, but I'll be perfectly honest with you, I just don't know where it's going right now. We have a lot of renovations that we're doing, but I just don't know. And if any of you know, I'd love for you to tell me. But people are still getting back up on their feet. That's what we're seeing.
Right. I want to keep that conversation going, but I'm going to put a poll question up because I also want all these folks out there in the chat to comment and ask questions. So it is, how would you describe your workload in hospitality over the last 3 months? Has it started increasing? Has it greatly increased? No change, somewhat decreased, or greatly decreased? Okay, so you can answer that. All right, so Adam, what about you? You had just finished a big project in Asheville.
So yeah, I mean, we had the uncanny experience of opening a hotel in the midst of the crisis. So we were doing basically construction administration and installation during the first phase of the crisis. So that was weird. But it's open and you know, pretty exciting to open, even though it was in the midst of a pandemic. Weird as can be.
Morris, you had the same experience with the Rockaway Hotel, right?
Yeah, and that was delayed a little bit, but they managed to get it open, just squeak in at the end of the summer. But, you know, I've seen a lot. I think, well, first of all, I just want to go back to the original part of the question. And I think things were really rough right around April, May, and July, I think was sort of like the down point. I remember I was in New Orleans for most of the time, but I came back in July for a month, and I said that it was like walking around the yard in a penitentiary. You know, you go out and nobody wanted to get close to anybody. Everybody was looking down. I think the city has really come back to life. You know, all of the restaurants and the outdoor dining, I think, has done tremendous service to the city and also to all those businesses. But I'm seeing things really start to change, and even in the last couple of weeks, you know, obviously everybody was singing and dancing in the streets on Saturday, but I think that that bodes well, I think, and obviously that we may have some more problems with some spikes, but I think people are starting to look, you know, forward and looking towards actually projects are starting up and starting to get, you know, scheduled for construction. So I'm feeling good in general, and I think that we've all, as you know, as each one of us in our individual offices has to deal with managing an office, making sure that's going, and working with clients. In a way, I think this has been busier than just normal time. So, but I do feel like things are starting to open up and things are starting to happen. So,
I mean, I would agree that I feel like we're busier than we've ever been, but at the same time, we're, you know, I feel like we're out there hitting the bushes for work. And we had a lot of work go on hold, and then we're fortunate enough to have a lot that was in construction. So that really saved us. And that's like the big, you know, I'm so thankful for that. That's such a huge, and for now to be back on site just feels amazing. So I'm hopeful too, but I'm nervous. I think we've got some interesting months ahead of us, and it's going to be challenging. And you know, I think we're going to have to sort of rethink the way we do business.
Adam, what about you? You were pretty busy early on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of one of those things, you know, mirroring what Margaret and Morris both hit on. There was the early months, and I do remember, Margaret, that webinar that we did together, and it was a whole lot of unknown unknowns. And I think, you know, over those early months, I think we felt a little bit less pain because we saw maybe the U.S. work was starting to be a little bit questionable, but the work in Asia, as Margaret mentioned, and the work in the Middle East and in Europe felt as though that they were maybe taking a different trajectory. And so we've, you know, similar to what Sarah's mentioned, I think that we've been fortunate that that we haven't felt as kind of hard hit hit by it. Our office in Bangkok never closed. The office in San Francisco is hiring. So it just, we felt a little bit of pain in some parts of the company and maybe a little bit of joy in other parts of the company. That's personally made us feel optimistic about the fact that maybe things weren't as terrible, and our anxiety wasn't necessarily as raised as high as it could have been.
Both of you are working on Six Senses.
Yeah.
London, and Adam, you in New York.
New York, right.
Have you guys talked about that at all?
Well, we sat on a panel and we're complimenting each other on each other's work. So
I love the one in New York. I think it's fantastic, and I got a chance to walk that site with Sarah from Six Senses, and I haven't seen it since it was sort of in the early days of construction, and I don't know where it's at now, Adam.
Yeah, and it went on hold, and I would say it's probably still on hold. I think substantially, but it's we got word in the next month it's going to pick up again. I mean, this is my experience has been very much like everyone's here. Stuff going on hold, some stuff starting. But I will say somewhere in May or June, all of our developers kind of woke up and realized that in 3 years when the projects that we start now are delivering, we're going to be in a different world. And once that sunk in, things got a lot better. Then, and I think the big shock of all this truly is virtual office, that it works.
Yeah.
It totally works.
Right, and that also will change what hospitality is as well, right? I mean, you have those conversations with your clients now as well, because people might be staying at a hotel for a much longer time and they need to work.
Absolutely. I think
that's definitely happening.
On top of what Adam just mentioned, the workplace is probably going to be the most significant change that we see come out of this. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of knock-on effects that happen from that, right? And one of them is going to be in the hospitality space, and specifically within hotels, because you're going to have a workforce that is untethered to one specific place. And a lot of people are going to be taking advantage of it. And so instead of necessarily the old adage of saying, well, the room is the room, but it's all about the common space. Now people need the rooms. We've had a number of our clients and developers coming back to us and saying, look, we really need to make sure that the rooms are multifunctional to the point where people can stay there longer, and that you can do a call and not be in the midst of a busy lobby or a lobby bar, right? That you actually have an ability to carve out a workspace and just travel around, but whilst working. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
Don't you think? I want to talk about this everyone's going to get a chance to talk about that. I just think, what's so funny is that we've all proven that we don't have to be where we're supposed to be, but at the same time, we're still tethered somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just not the place we thought we would be tethered to, right? Let's talk about that. What are your experiences? Even Morris, did anything change as you were opening up, as the Rockaway Hotel was opening up?
I think that one was too fully baked.
Yeah.
And that building or that project was designed to have a lot of outdoor space, which I think worked out well for them. We have a long relationship with Roost. We've done a number of projects with them in Philly. We're doing a couple projects in Charleston, Tampa, and in Detroit. And one of the things they are looking at is trying to find ways to incorporate some kind of desking or workspace into those rooms. They found that since it's a long stay, more like an apartment hotel, they found that they did pretty well during the pandemic because a lot of people were in cities already, and so they just decided to stay there. And then they were using other rooms for meetings and things like that internally, really. So
it's like 3 years ago, everyone was saying, "Get rid of the desk, get rid of the desk."
Exactly.
Now the desk is going back.
And the micro room, like this room has to be as small as possible. It's all about the public space, and now it's going to be completely flipped.
Totally.
Are there within the hospitality world, because it is a small world too, are there certain developers or certain hoteliers or like certain people that are like coming out as a leader in a different way, even within your own, like who you deal with? Are you finding that, because that's what we want, right? We want to move ahead.
Yeah, I think Morris actually brought up the notion of an apart hotel and how
Right.
Ruth is well positioned. And I know there are a number of companies out there. You know, Eden pops to mind out of London that we're doing 2 projects for them. I think they're doing something like 15 projects across Europe right now. And their occupancy rates are during this period of time have been around 60 to 70%, whereas the rest of the occupancy rates in London, for example, are hovering around 20. And so you're starting to see a lot of other groups, so the likes of Soho House included, moving towards adopting at least an apart hotel model as part of their kind of ideals moving forward, because I think that it does satisfy, as Morris was mentioning, an ability to kind of ebb and flow with maybe an uncertain future.
Yeah. Are you also finding that developers, this is when they take advantage of, like, if they have the money, they go out and get stuff, right?
Well, that's what we're finding. I mean, there's basically hotels cost 60% less than they did 6 months ago. So they're taking advantage of that. And I mean, it's just about having the cash. And so some people have a different model where they're cash focused and others were revenue focused. So if you're revenue focused, you're going to have trouble. So
right? Like
coming to us and saying, what can we do?
Yeah, and a lot of it is Adam Rolston mentioned this before, right? It's a much longer timeline. It's not a 3-year timeline and then I'm going to sell the thing. I'm going to hold on to this for 25 years. So, I think it was Baron von Rothschild, an unfortunate quote, but when there's blood on the streets, you go about and buy. And there's a lot of developers out there that are just grabbing stuff because it is an opportune time, and that's then yielding new opportunities for hospitality.
Right. Margaret, you were going to say
what we found, so we're doing a lot of resort renovations. So we're in Hawaii, we're in California right now, and a few other locations. And what we were finding is we were right in the midst of COVID in deep renovation, and costs were going up because of how they were sequencing getting the work done. And we were all sitting there saying, is this going to be the way of the world? That it's not one group just, descending upon a site and building, they're going to have to stagger it. What we're seeing is that that is changing. But at first we had clients that were panicking saying, our budgets are completely out the window because the world has changed. So it is interesting seeing moving forward new development. We are seeing some very bullish people saying, we've got the money. We've been working on this for 5 or 6 years. Let's just go in and do it now. So that is a great piece of news moving forward. Yeah. But I'm with Sarah. I'm still a little twitchy, you guys. Yeah. I'm still a little twitchy.
Yeah, of course. And Margaret, you were telling me about an interesting story that I've heard a few times now. It probably won't be the big bulk of anybody's business, but the Rockaway sort of fits in there too, sort of like outlier places. So for instance, Margaret, you were telling me you were looking at like a smaller resort, but it's out near the
Saugerties. Yeah, so it's in Saugerties. And Morris, I have to tell you, I love that freaking hotel. And I said to Cindy, I said, boy, did they hit the nail on the head with that hotel?
He did.
I have friends in Williamsburg who get on the subway at like 4 a.m. to go out surfing. There is such a big culture out there. But anyway, what we've been witnessing, being upstate, that everyone is getting out of the city. Now, I don't know how, I think that will still continue, of course. But people wanting to get out of Manhattan if they're not getting on a plane and what they can do. So we, got a phone call about an opportunity in Saugerties, and great 76-room hotel, this gem that we're going to be working on. And it's interesting. Those opportunities don't happen with us all that often. We're typically bigger resorts and things like that, but we're thrilled because it's people migrating out of the city. And I don't know if the city still feels that way. Does the city still feel that way, or does it feel super active?
I think it's more like what Adam was saying about these collateral effects, is that I think people have realized that they can be in both places. So, we do private residential, like houses and stuff upstate, and we've gotten like 6 calls over the last month for new construction, houses, people that have just bought property.
Yeah.
Not all of them will turn into projects, but and they're not like fleeing the city. I don't want to give that impression.
Right.
Just realize that they can work hybrid. So they want to have that now.
The thing that I think is interesting for you all, like Margaret's story, is that those places used to be where you would flee to kind of get away and recharge. And now there are new opportunities that you actually, I mean, Margaret, you know, up in the Catskills, would you ever think you'd be doing a hospitality project there? Like probably, I can see the residential a little bit more, Adam, but it's sort of interesting, right?
Totally.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's changed how we work. I mean, it's just completely changed it.
Yeah, Morris, by the way, I was brought up in Long Beach, so that, you know, we would drive by the Rockaways my whole life, going into the city or going, you were never going to the Rockaways, you were driving.
Right.
So I'm just so happy, like, given enough time, right?
Well, I mean, you know, there are a lot of artists out there, the surfers, obviously. I think the best way to get out there is on the ferry. It's, you know, 45 minutes, so I think, you know, they had a lot of foresight there. So, you know, obviously COVID has been an accelerant, and I think things are changing. But I got to just raise my hand for getting together and meeting. You know, one of the things that I've seen, the biggest change that I've seen, is that up until maybe a month ago, there was nobody in the office. I'd go in and it would be empty, and then there were 2 or 3 people. I'd say we have a dozen or so now. I mean, obviously, it's a lot less. And I think people have been almost too productive. Like, I'm getting emails and texts and, you know, drawings at midnight. It's like, stop working, you know? And I think drawing that line between work and play or just downtime has been difficult. And so I think having a routine and being able to go into the office and sort of turn on, turn off has been really good. And I think that we'll never, I don't think, but ever go back to working at an office, you know, whatever, you know, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week or more. But I think that all of these other ways of working are going to play a part moving forward. But I think hopefully people will still want to come back together, you know?
Yeah, so. You know, that's, we're going to get to wellness, of course, because there's a whole question about that too. Like you said, they're working around the clock, or they're working because they want to keep their job, or their creative spirit is alive and well, but then you have to stay on top of it as their boss too, and it keeps you working around the clock, and we keep talking about wellness. But I do want to ask, because you brought that up, somebody asked a question which I thought was interesting. Is your young talent just happy to have a job right now? Are you seeing, because the hospitality industry's been hit so hard, that they want to look elsewhere? Like, what's happening? How are you keeping them encouraged and creative and mentoring them?
Such a good question.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's why we're working so hard. I think trying to keep the office moving, keeping people together, even virtually, I think is a big part of, you know, being transparent, sending out emails every other week just to tell people where we are, what's happening, what the forecast looks like. And I think also, you know, in the beginning we were having virtual happy hours and, you know, different games that we were playing and different things. But I think it takes a lot of energy to keep things glued together.
It does.
Yes, I agree.
I do a weekly roundup, because I found that we got on these happy hours and someone's sitting in a corner doing something totally different, not even talking. I thought, I'm the only one talking, trying to keep this going. And it was, then we were setting up events. But I started doing a Monday morning roundup that can take me half the day, where I just check in on every single person. And we don't even talk about work. You know, I said, let's just imagine that we're sitting at the table in the kitchen.
That's awesome.
Catch up. And that seems to be the best thing for them.
Idea.
And remember too, these guys, they mine for gold differently. Like, I'm old, you know. I look at magazines. I'm the queen of the hard copy, man. I love all that. But remember, these guys mine for gold differently. They're always on their computer. They might as well be working remotely while they're in the studio, you know. So they're adapting. And I will say, and I'm not here to be Debbie Downer at all, but my team is very thankful that we have kept it going and that they have jobs, because not everyone out there, I mean, some of our clients, people who are on teams, some of our projects that went on hold in New York. People have lost their jobs. So I felt like, Morris, pretty quickly that it wasn't about their physical health, it was about their mental health and really staying connected, knowing that they weren't out there by themselves.
Yeah. And Margaret, don't you think, since everyone's, nodding, don't you think there's something that's balancing out the generations in some weird way because of all this? Magazines aside, although I keep hearing from people like that, like when they change their subscription to home, they're like so excited that they get their issue. But it's that now you're having to become much more tech savvy than you normally would. And I feel like the young people really are, and a lot of them are holed up in a small apartment, and that they need the connection. So in some ways, there's something good in there.
And guys, we opened the studio July 6th. I drove down to the city, opened the studio, and as most of you know, I was sitting there by myself. No one showed up. And I was told 4 people in their apartments wanted to go in. But as I said to someone who had been outside the city, and they're like, why aren't they in the studio? I don't understand. When I get back, I'm going to be in the studio. And I said, yeah, easier said than done. And I said, imagine, get up in the morning, you're on an early call. You go down a rabbit hole. It winds up being a 2-hour call. Like these Zoom calls are endless. I don't know about you guys, but there should be like a cutoff time, for God's sakes. So then they get off the damn Zoom call. They realize they haven't taken a shower. It's 9:30. They hop in the shower. They get out. They didn't get anything to eat. And then they run back to their desk. And by that time, they've gone down a rabbit hole for a project. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, so even they are realizing, I want to go out. I want to be able to go to the studio. I don't necessarily need to. And really, I'm in a groove where the days fly by. And I don't know if you guys feel it, but I feel like Monday and then it's Friday instantly, you know?
It's true. If I could just get back to the original question about the staff, I mean, for me, that's the main thing I'm worried about, right? I want them to be okay. I want everybody to have jobs. I want them to be happy.
Yep.
And it's the thing that keeps me up at night. Yeah. Much more so than finding work. I mean, although that does too. But so we instituted all these things where we have weekly, I have so many weekly calls now, but I think it's changed the way we do business, and I feel so much more connected to my whole team. And that to me is like, it's totally transformative on how we do business and how we interact with each other. And I hope how they feel about us. I hope they feel that they're more connected to us. And I think they feel thankful that they have a job. I don't, I've never asked someone, do they feel thankful they have a job, but I would hope that they do. And
I mean, one thing that I find interesting when talking to you guys, I've always called the hospitality industry like the golden children, because it was, it seemed to me that in all the, we cover everything, but everyone always wants to eventually get into hospitality, right? And we, always saying diversify, 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 and then you finally diversify so you can get into hospitality. So now you're in hospitality, end up doing hospitality, and now you're in this kind of position. So let's just talk a little bit about what hospitality is morphing into. Like, for instance, Sarah, you're starting to do some multifamily residential. Are you seeing that shift very quickly move?
Well, honestly, I mean, before the pandemic, all we did was hotels, both architecture and interior design. So it became immediately clear we had to pivot or we were gonna, suffer.
Yeah.
So we've been trying, we already have a pretty robust healthcare group, so we've been trying to grow that, and then trying to pivot into the multifamily arena with some success. Not, it's not like pouring in, but it's with some success. And I think, people are starting to see that a hospitality firm could easily transform into that arena. But, I think like everybody, we've had to sort of completely rethink how we're doing everything and how are we positioning ourselves to move forward and to be successful?
Yeah, there's a question here from Jonathan Durling. Hi, Jonathan. And he said, this is sort of interesting because maybe you can help us frame it a little bit. What's the profile of these kind of cash strong hotel owner brands that are investing now? Are you guys, because you guys are closer to that than than I would be, for instance. Can you give us a little bit of anybody who's working with one or two of them? How would you describe them?
I mean, for me, we're not actually working with them yet, right? That we have all these RFPs out and then they sort of sit. It's not like things are sort of slow to kind of get started. We've, like Margaret, have been fortunate to have a couple of new projects, thank God. But I feel like I think the budgets are going to go way down, and it's going to be kind of a different approach than perhaps we've seen before. I don't know exactly yet, quite frankly, because it hasn't really come across my desk in true form, but.
Interestingly enough, I think it's a really good point that you're making, insofar that, right, there's the holy trinity of how a project comes about, sometimes more, but there's at least three parts, right? Like there's the developer, there's the brand, and then there's the designer. And so I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing, but developers are still, there's a lot of developers that are really gung-ho and moving forward, but we had a call about a project that we're starting in Barcelona that we're literally starting because the developer, unfortunately for the brand, and I won't say what brand it was, but the brand got jettisoned, because they're just like, this is not like what I'm now doing, right? So they're going to move forward, and I think it's now the brands. It's not necessarily the brands that are really going to be going gung-ho. I think it's the developers going gung-ho, and then they're going to be having a lot more choice with brands that are now needing to kind of fill their portfolio. And so I think it's really a developer's market. And I think, Sarah, you had mentioned that before, right? Like it's really developers are the ones that are winning out on this.
Yeah, that's 100% true. It's 100% true. I mean, we've experienced two types of category. One is sort of alternative markets like Austin, places like that. But then also reinvestment, and I think someone else mentioned this too, reinvestment in existing markets. Like Adam Aberco and we are working on Union Square W.
Yeah.
And
I worked on that a million years ago.
Yeah. And that's not only like a company that's sort of refreshing in a renovation way. They're like taking this as a moment to pivot and rethink, their approach to that brand. So it does feel like a moment where big thinking is happening at the brand level. Even like what you were saying, Adam, like brands are now having to compete for business, right? So, and we get approached by them talking about like what opportunities are out there, that kind of thing, what developers are you connected with, that sort of thing. So I think the brands are going to be sharpening their, their approaches.
Yeah. I think if you look at New York specifically, we talk to clients who are like, yeah, I just flew into New York and we're looking, when you look at all the transactions that have been happening in New York with portfolios, if you look at what Highgate's doing and a couple of other people, you look at, the addition in Times Square, which is a terrible story, but, when you look at what those numbers are, the big developers that have very deep pockets are quietly moving around and looking at assets. They don't want to be like a bunch of vultures picking up bones, but they're quietly going in. What we're also seeing is that independent market, I think, is really striking a chord. And it's those developers that have one or two hotels that are now doing something very different. And I think that they feel very empowered it's much easier for independents to pivot. But I think that when you start to look at the independent hotels that are coming online, it's incredibly inspiring. And I think that brands are having to sit up straight and pay attention. I think that it isn't business as usual. And when you see some of these great projects that are coming online, it's a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, where does design play? Is it the leading role? I want us to make sure we answer that. So that there's a question here that was interesting, Nikki Fraser, on what you were saying. What are you doing to find new clientele and projects, particularly with the lack of in-person networking events and such?
I just follow Adam Rolston around and then just try to make sure that our portfolio is like
and I just follow Cindy around.
Well, you guys are like the pretty boys of interior design that we all want to follow and get the projects that you get. But for those of us who have to really, till the soil and find the work and get on the subway and go somewhere, It's very much about, I don't know if you all felt this, but listen, we're all in this to support our teams and to run businesses. You've got to have, over the years, you have to have been able to build up a network. And if you haven't, then there's no one to call. I'm a very big believer in not being a fair weather friends. I hate my friends that are fair weather friends. You know, they only show up at the best moments. And I've had clients that I've talked to for years and not about projects. And those are typically the people that really remember that you were there with them when nothing was going on. So I think it's about you know, you make hay while the sun shines, but you better be next to, you want to be in everyone's foxhole, and you want everyone to invite you into their foxhole.
Right, exactly. I completely agree with that philosophy in life and in work and in all those things. Morris, what's your sense about some of these issues? I know you're doing a full block residential building in Dumbo. Is that where are you with that?
That's moving along pretty smoothly. It's topped out. Most of the windows have gone in. A lot of the skin is on, and that's moving along. And the sales are pretty good. So, and the strange thing is that I was there. I do Wednesday's job site day, where I try and run around to all the job sites, as many as I can. And they're getting requests to combine some apartments, and people are looking, at doing that. So. That's actually been pretty successful. But I would say that right now, and like even today, right before this call, I got a call from a developer that had put something on hold and said, I think we're ready to go. So I think now's when you're going to see the thawing. And I have a friend, Avi Brash, he has Polyhouse. Not working with him, not doing any projects for him. But they have 13 hotels, and they kind of had a real rough time right when this pandemic started, but he's put a fund together, and he's on a buying spree right now. And he's running around he's sending me pictures. He's on another plane, and so he's literally trying to transform that from, sort of a dozen hotels into probably twice that many. He's acquiring smaller, independent hotels, brands that have 4 or 5 hotels, and he's just expanding that. And I think the other opportunity that I'm seeing is a lot of people are looking at different ways to slice the market in terms of, I think a few people had mentioned, Sarah and Adam, or the Adams, just the cost, and Margaret as well, people fine tuning that. But I think that you're seeing sort of a stratification. You're seeing some of the super high end, and we're talking to some people about some really luxe projects, but then again, we're talking to people about doing some, more things like in the Rockaways, which, nice projects, but they're, the ADR isn't, as high as, you would normally see.
Yeah. So to that point, someone asked a really good question, and they were saying, well, we need to talk about, I love that we're talking about the business side. So it's like a really good lens from you all. But people do want to talk about sustainability and wellness, of course. But there was a question that was interesting that was saying, will sustainability take a hit with these kind of lower budget projects?
Not in our experience. I mean, I think it's almost, we've been talking in the studio about wellness and sustainability kind of hand in hand. Right. We like to call wellness the gateway drug to sustainability, because what's good for, the human is logically good for the planet, and vice versa, right? So that's kind of our thing. But I think the wellness thing is now getting tied to sustainability in a way that is making people want to invest in that. Even I actually would really agree with Morris on 2 things. One is that, I'm going to sound a little Pollyanna now. I think we're on the verge of one of the most exciting times in our industry. Truly. Like, it's going to just be an explosion. The roaring 20s. So that's one thing. And then the other is just the high-low thing. I think that's probably a little bit the result of the distribution of income in our culture, which you could have a problem with. But, we are experiencing exactly the same thing. Very entry-level, playful, interesting, very inexpensive budgets, like virtually nothing. But they're spending on design. The developers are spending on design. And then, of course, the very high end, and a lot of reinvestment in what high end means, like trying to think about what new luxury is.
Right. So I just had to go to a debate in London before I got on this call, and we were talking about sustainability in hospitality. So 25% of all construction and hospitality now is sustainable design. This is globally, okay? Back in 2011, 2013, sustainable design increased by 50%. So I feel like it took Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old, to like really rattle our cages and say, listen, people, this is real. And kids demonstrating all over the world to say, we're not going to do this anymore. I will tell you, for us, many times, because that's always the first question that we ask, it's like, do you want this to be a sustainable project? And of course, everyone has the right intentions at the very beginning. Of course they do. A lot of it's infrastructure and everything else. And sometimes that bubble bursts, but I think it's going to be so much more of the conversation now. It just has to be. It has to be.
But it is also going to be, as it's always been for us, about money, right? I mean,
of course.
I have to say that most of our clients are not interested in sustainability unless there's a tax credit or there's some sort of payoff for it. I mean, I think that that's the truth. And then I think that they will, hopefully, I think unless it's mandated by the state or the country or by the brands, then that's what's going to change it.
I want to, this is interesting. So Adam and Sarah, how would you describe the difference between the kinds of projects you're getting? Because I kind of understand both of those viewpoints, but they're completely different.
Yeah, different.
Well, I mean, if Adam's doing work for a Sixth Sense, right? So they're sustainably minded. Like they don't have any choice but to be sustainably minded. If you're a young developer who wants to do a new independent hotel, which we have a couple of those right now, they don't care.
Yeah. And listen, it's budget. Sixth Senses.
And I agree, it's budget. But I think it's a lot easier now because the products are out there.
Yep.
And, 10 years ago, to find, a recycled bubblegum wrapper carpet, you didn't find them, right? But now you can, and I think everything from counter surfaces to wall covering, to fabrics, textiles, they're all there. And I think that makes it easier on the interior side. And I think on the architecture side, it's just gotten built into the code for sure has made it a lot easier. But I agree that we kind of have to slip in sometimes, but the focus on wellness, air quality, those things I think are really topical.
I mean, we have, for our sponsors, just because you brought it up, in terms of cleanability and germs, are your clients now talking about it in a much, much bigger way?
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Do you ever ask your friends, have you ever noticed going into hotel rooms and you can't open the windows? And they're like, God, I never thought of that. You're right. You can't open the window. That's really scary, and just those baseline questions of the environment, you want it to exceed where you live at home, you should have the option to open a window, very simple things.
Right. Some of those big changes. Adam, the other Adam, Abracos. Yeah,
what is the other one? That one.
Up there.
I want to get out of here.
Just adding on to what I think Morris was getting at, 10 years ago, and as we all know, interior design, we can affect sustainability only so much, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Sustainability comes from the infrastructure of the project, and those are things that are outside of our purview and they're outside of our ability to control. We can certainly do our best, but it's 10% to 15% at best to what the overall arching kind of sustainable. And I just think that the overall performance of some of the things like mechanical systems and lighting systems have really made leaps and bounds to the point where I think people are willing to spend a modicum of extra money for a longer term performance, and that their operating expenses then are going to be reduced. So now there's a quicker payoff for them. Whereas 10 years ago, that just didn't exist. They'd have to spend an exorbitant amount more for a mechanical system that actually performed in that way. And so think sustainability, has become easier for people to just kind of fall into. It's not outrageous.
Somebody's asking, like, besides like hand sanitizer, or like, what do you think are some of the big positives that are going to happen in your hospitality projects that'll help build the confidence for the clients to come back and stay at hotels?
I think I think quite honestly, it's sanitary, to be honest with you. Not the hand sanitizer part. It's about, can I really take off my shoes and socks and walk on this carpet? And has this bed really been laundered? And I think that it's having that confidence. Now listen, I'm the gal that holds the handle in the subway, doesn't wash her hands enough. I think I have like the immune system of a horse or an elephant, I swear to God. So for me, I'll like stay anywhere. I don't care. But for those people, when you look at it.
The rest of the world, in other words.
Yeah, for the rest of the world. I think that it's having that confidence that where they are staying is safe and they're not going to get sick there. Super basic. That's what I think.
That's an operations thing, not really a design.
Of course it is.
Oh, no,
of course it is.
Air quality, I think, is one area that we can focus on. And that was the one thing that I think was somewhat liberating for me in terms of traveling on an airplane. All the reports that came out of how clean the air is and how quickly the air changes are, made me feel a little more comfortable. I mean, obviously we wore 2 masks and all the rest of it, but I think that we're seeing a lot more focus on, all of those things like air quality, cleanliness, and touchless everything.
Yeah.
And that does kind of get to the area that, in terms of our the interior design areas of our practices, where we can have an effect, right? Because healthy materials in general, like the Healthy Materials Lab at the New School, all this research into how materials affect you, all that stuff. I mean, I think we can have an effect on that, and that's a wellness thing, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I became a junkie of watching Material Connections. I mean, the stuff that is being done in food service that we could learn from. I get totally geeked out on learning about that stuff, and they're so far ahead of us. And I think that we can grab that technology from them. That's what's so exciting, because Maurice, you're right.
Thank you.
There's so much out there now that we don't even know.
Thank you. It's commercial for Material Connection, a SANDOW. Okay, so wait, I want to go back. So our good friend over on the West Coast, Sue Firestone, hi Sue, how are you? And she's asking, this is something I'm sure you all are talking about, which is, what does interior design and hospitality look like in the future, especially, she was asking dining experience and bar lounge. Now I know that Adam was photographing his new hotel, and they literally had to take the whole restaurant apart, like put it together and then take it all apart and put everything 6 feet apart again for people to then dine. So, but what are you guys imagining?
I mean, one thing that we were asked to do for one of our smaller restaurants was to develop an interior partition thing, because New York City has this rule of 5 feet above the floor. If you have a partition, you can be closer together. And it just struck me that, we're just coming back around to things that have existed in history, like, booths existed for a reason. So all of a sudden we've turned a restaurant that was all tables into booths.
That's pretty cool.
Interesting, yeah.
I think it's important, like, it has to be flexible, right? You have to be able to, like, the way we're pivoting, they're pivoting, and hopefully in about a year they're pivoting back. So I don't want to design something for them that in a year is going to be obsolete and they're going to have to redo it because we don't have to worry about COVID anymore because the vaccine came through.
Right.
So I think it's about thinking about how we can kind of let them be flexible within a beautiful space and it still feels fantastic and alive and not just like people 6 feet apart,
Yeah,
Right.
that's a super interesting point. Because everyone asks this question: how is hospitality changing? And it's kind of like I always feel like I don't know what to say. I mean, because the truth is, there's things that we are doing immediately now, but everyone knows that in a year from now it's going to be a different world, or 2 years, or whatever it is. So flexibility.
Yeah, I hope we're not going to continue like this, and we have to be thinking about post-COVID because it's just too depressing otherwise. It is.
I kind of joke around with all of you guys, though, that, you know, everyone talks about, well, now we're going to really understand what it's like to be good to ourselves, healthy beings. But the minute you guys get tons of work, it's over. You're back to doing what you, oh, come on.
But think about it. I'm a hugger. Sarah knows I'm a hugger. Cindy knows I'm a hugger. Adam, you guys don't quite know yet. And Morris, I just met you. But I met this client, and you know, you're even like, how do you even greet people? It would be a terrible way to exist if this were to go on forever. And I just hope it doesn't. And it's really, none of our clients have really said, okay, now, how are we going to, COVID's not even coming into the conversation for our new builds, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of questions about technology, so let's just brief.
Well, shut up.
Yeah. They're completely unruly. I've lost control. No, just what things, even based on, let's say, from the lowest budget to the highest budget, there will be things that change, just in terms of touchless and how you know, and reception. What are the, give us some sound bites for people to take away in terms of what you see there.
Well, I'll actually bring up a mutual client of Adam and ours, Six Senses, actually immediately came to the table and had some really smart ideas about things like the minibar, right? And I'll give them a lot of credit. They said, look, you know, there's going to be concern. Normally you go into a minibar and there's 10 glasses and there's all these different things. And, you know, people are like, I don't know who's touched those glasses. I don't know the last time that they were washed. I don't know the last time. And it's not that Six Senses is an incredible operating team. They've got, you know, dishwashers on every floor. I mean, they go to the nth degree, but most humans don't know that. And so they might walk into a room and say, I don't know if those are washed. So they're literally downsizing some of the mini bars, but turning them more into personalized services. So when you get there, you know, you sort of have people bring you things that are fresh, that you have maybe, you know, ticked off as part of your preferences. And so there's not a concern about stuff that's been lying around. And instead they flipped it into a hospitality experience where now they're providing you with a fresh kind of wellness alternative and you know, fresh cocktails that you know have been created specifically for you. So they've taken a negative and turned it into a positive. I thought that was a great example.
That is great. What are you seeing in terms of the bath and spa experience?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
They're not being used. So, I mean, it hasn't really come up for us.
Well, touchless for sure, no?
Yeah.
Do you see bathrooms be smaller to accommodate larger living space? Will the bathrooms be larger and more spa-like? You know yet?
Weirdly, we haven't redesigned any of the ones that are about to be under construction. I think that they are sort of moving forward. I mean, a lot of them already are, you know, have materials spec that are antimicrobial, and, you know, like they're already kind of to the nth degree, very, very clean spaces. So I don't know if that helps.
Okay. All right. I'm looking, their sponsors had a few questions. So I'm going to ask, so what do guests expect when it comes to charging iPhones, iPads, computers, in the guest room or public space, outdoor spaces?
That's already given.
Threshold of entry, power everywhere. You got it.
Yeah. And that's already a given, pretty much.
All right, that's already given. Okay, what about when it comes to tunable lighting and associated lighting solutions?
Well,
I mean, that's again, going back to Six Senses for Adam and I, you know, circadian rhythm. And
I was just going to bring that up, yeah.
That I think is going to be much stronger for sure in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing it on that particular project. The whole project has that throughout, but more and more, I think.
What we're also seeing, so you talked about spa and bathrooms, but for fitness centers, what we're seeing is people are opting to go outside as opposed to go into the fitness center in the hotel, or we're providing spaces within the room where they can work out privately. That's one thing that we're seeing.
What about, there's a question here on multifunctional. What does a multifunctional room look like? Sliding doors, multifunctional furniture, wall beds. Have you gotten there yet?
Yeah, Murphy. I mean, honest to God, I've been banging the Murphy bed drum for a decade, and
what? Are you really?
Yeah, we finally got a client willing to do it in Berlin. And so we'll see what happens.
I love when the group is so good that everyone is cheering the other person. That's when you have a really good group, because it's like, oh, when Margaret said this and Morris said that, and I agree with Adam and Sarah. Oh my God, So I want to thank
you guys.
I know you guys are
new besties.
You guys are amazing. We need to kind of have a round two, because I think we're just dipping in, to tell you the truth. But look. We're around the table. One kind of final thought that you want to share or you're dealing with. One final thought, Morris.
I would just say I'm optimistic. I see things changing. A lot of the projects that were stalling or seem to go on hold are all thawing now, and the city feels great. And I hope they don't take the outdoor dining away. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to staying as a byproduct of this experience. So.
Okay, Adam from Africa.
I'll just tack on to something I was going to mention earlier that Sarah was discussing, that the focus on the staff and making sure that the staff have a new way forward, I think has been incredibly inspiring to see how it's been evolving. Being able to be virtual or half virtual, whatever it may be, and still build culture is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And I've been massively proud of the people that have been working in our studios, because they've been just developing all sorts of solutions. And so I say kudos to all of the studios out there for finding their own way forwards. Really great.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, Margaret.
Okay, I'm gonna get schmaltzy. So, when we do talk about our teams, I try to say, well, when this whole thing started, when we all think about what we have been through, how many recessions, 2008, now we've been hit with this. The one thing that I have learned is all we can do is the best that we can do. And as our teams are out there by themselves and they're really working their fingers to the bone and they're really stressed about it, my mantra has become, we're just going to do the best that we can do. And that's what we're going to do. It's simple and probably way too simple for a closing statement. But I'm very proud of my team too, because they have weathered the storm and done an incredible job. And I think our job really is to make sure that we take care of them. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. Okay, Sarah.
So I would say the exact same things.
Because you're that kind of group.
Yes.
But I have more.
Okay.
But I mean, I do agree. Like I think it's made us pivot in such a way that the team has become, we are a family and we've got to get through this together. But it's also really inspired us to, how can we be better? And the Black Lives Movement really inspired us to try and be a lot better, because right now our office is basically 99.9 white, and we need to do better. And so we've been really trying really hard in numerous ways to try and change the hospitality industry to just sort of challenge itself to be better. So
thank you, Sarah. That's lovely.
Nice words. Nice words.
Yeah. Okay, Adam.
My turn. Okay. So I'm gonna end where I began, which is, after this weekend and after everything that all of us have been through, you were asking earlier, or one of your audience members asked, how do you get work? And Margaret's response, I would summarize as, you build a community. So I think my answer would be love wins. And this last weekend proves it. It's what you said, Cindy, that it's about building community. It has to do with what Sarah just said. It has to do with what Adam just said about building community within and a culture within his company. This is how great things get done, is when we come together and do amazing, beautiful things. So, and I think I'm like Morris, I'm very bullish. I think we're about to launch into the most amazing period of creativity and community when we all get back together and have drinks.
I love that. Thank you, Adam. That's beautiful. By the way, Adam has I don't know if you noticed, he's got a halo or wings behind him.
Yeah.
It's a very
something going on back there.
So first of all, I want to thank you guys. You guys were like the perfect team. You all said it so well that, I'm so proud to be part of this design community. And what you do better than anybody is solve problems. So you will get beyond these, we will get beyond these problems together. Thank you for leaders like yourself. And I love that what Adam said, the roaring 20s. It's going to be the roaring 2021s or maybe roaring 2022s. Okay, we'll give ourselves a little bit of a break, but let's look forward to much, much better times. Okay, one quick thank you to our sponsors, the Brizzo and Delta brands. Yay, let's everyone clap.
Yay, thank you.
Pond Headler wall coverings, Hudson Valley Light Firm. Thank you all. Let's do it again. Everyone out there, thanks for all your questions and comments. Interior Design loves you. Big virtual hugs to our team.
This is great. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Morris and Adam.
Bye. Morris, nice to meet you.